The morning started like any other aboard the UES Liberty until the sensors began screaming warnings that would change everything forever. Captain Lisa Carter was reviewing supply reports when her communications officer, Lieutenant Sam Rodriguez, called out in a voice that made everyone on the bridge freeze in place. "Captain, we have massive energy signatures appearing at the edge of our solar system," he said while his fingers danced across his control panel with increasing urgency. "These readings are unlike anything we have ever seen before." Lisa set down her coffee cup and moved to the main display where the tactical readout showed dozens of enormous objects materializing from what appeared to be tiers in space itself. The ships were huge, each one easily 10 times the size of the Liberty, and they moved with a grace that seemed impossible for vessels of such massive scale. "How many ships are we looking at, Rodriguez?" Lisa asked while studying the formation patterns that somehow reminded her of something she had seen before, but could not quite place. 47 confirmed contacts, Captain, with more appearing every few minutes, Rodriguez replied as sweat began forming on his forehead. "They are maintaining formation approximately 1 million kilometers from Earth and seem to be waiting for something." The bridge crew worked in tense silence as more alien vessels continued to appear from hyperspace. Lisa had served in the Earth Defense Force for 12 years and had always known this day might come, but seeing it happen felt surreal and terrifying at the same time. "Captain," called out Ensign Katie Murphy from the communications station, "we are receiving a transmission on all frequencies simultaneously. The signal is being broadcast to every communication device on Earth and throughout the solar system." Lisa nodded grimly and ordered the transmission to be played on the main speakers. What came through made everyone on the bridge step backward, involuntarily, as a deep, resonating voice filled the air with words that carried the weight of absolute authority. "People of Earth, we are the Zephyrian Empire. We have conquered 43 star systems and absorbed their populations into our domain. You will surrender unconditionally within 72 hours or face complete annihilation. This is not a negotiation. This is a statement of fact." The transmission continued with details about surrender procedures and the consequences of resistance. The alien voice described how other civilizations had tried to fight and failed within hours of the Empire's arrival. They spoke of planets reduced to ash and entire species erased from existence for the crime of defying Zephyrian authority. Lisa felt her stomach tighten as she listened to the methodical way the aliens described their previous conquests. They spoke about destroying civilizations the way someone might discuss exterminating insects, with complete detachment and clinical efficiency that somehow made their words even more frightening. "Lieutenant Rodriguez, get me Admiral Hayes immediately," Lisa ordered while her mind began racing through everything she knew about first contact protocols and military response procedures. Within minutes, Admiral John Hayes appeared on the main screen from Earth Defense Command headquarters. His face looked aged by decades in the few hours since the alien fleet had arrived, and his usually steady voice carried a tremor that Lisa had never heard before. "Captain Carter, I assume you have received the alien transmission," Hayes said, while looking directly into the camera with eyes that seemed to be searching for hope in a hopeless situation. "Yes, sir, we have the full recording and are analyzing it now," Lisa replied while gesturing to her crew who were working frantically at their stations. "What are our orders, Admiral?" Hayes was quiet for a long moment before responding in a voice that sounded like it was coming from someone much older and more tired than the man Lisa had known for years. "We are calling an emergency session of the Defense Council in 2 hours. Every military leader and government official will be there to discuss our response options." Lisa could see in the Admiral's expression that he already knew what the Council would decide. The alien fleet was simply too large and too advanced for Earth's defenses to handle. Their ships had energy readings that suggested technology decades ahead of anything humanity had developed, and their casual confidence implied they had faced and defeated countless other civilizations. "Admiral, if I may request permission to attend the council meeting," Lisa said while an idea began forming in the back of her mind. "I have some background in xenorchaeology that might be relevant to our situation." Hayes looked surprised for a moment before nodding slowly. "Of course, Captain. Your expertise in alien civilizations could be valuable, even though most of the civilizations you studied are long dead. After the communication ended, Lisa stood on the bridge looking out at the alien fleet through the main view screen. The ships hung in space like predators circling their prey, confident and patient in a way that suggested they had done this many times before with the same inevitable result. "Captain," Rodriguez said quietly from his station, "Earth Defense Command is already receiving surrender proposals from several government officials. They want to begin negotiations immediately." Lisa turned to study her crew and saw fear mixed with determination in their faces. These were good people who had joined the defense force to protect Earth and humanity, but they were facing something that seemed beyond any reasonable hope of resistance. "Rodriguez, I want you to pull up everything we have on the previous civilizations. The Zephyrians mentioned in their transmission," Lisa ordered while moving to her captain's chair. "Focus on any details about how those civilizations surrendered and what happened during the conquest process." "Aye, Captain," Rodriguez replied, while beginning to access the alien transmission data. "What exactly are we looking for?" Lisa stared out at the alien fleet while her mind began working through patterns and possibilities that most people would never consider. Her years studying dead alien civilizations had taught her that every species developed differently, with unique cultural patterns and psychological structures that influenced how they approached conflict and dominance. "I'm looking for something that might tell us why these aliens are so confident about our surrender," Lisa said while settling into her chair. 43 civilizations have fallen to them, but that does not mean 44 will follow the same pattern. The bridge crew continued their analysis while Lisa prepared to attend the Defense Council meeting that would likely decide humanity's fate. She had less than 2 hours to find something in the alien transmission that everyone else had missed, something that might give Earth a chance against an empire that had never known defeat. As she studied the tactical displays showing the alien fleet's formation, Lisa noticed something that made her pause and look more carefully at the positioning of their ships. The pattern was not random or purely tactical as everyone assumed, but seemed to follow specific rules that reminded her of something she had encountered in her archaeological research on dead worlds across the galaxy. Lisa Carter spent the entire night in her quarters surrounded by data screens displaying everything she could find about the Zephyrian Empire's previous conquests. The Defense Council meeting had gone exactly as she expected, with every military analyst and government official agreeing that resistance would be suicide and that Earth should begin surrender negotiations immediately. Admiral Hayes had assigned her 72 hours to find any useful intelligence about their enemies, but Lisa suspected she was being given busy work to keep her from interfering with the surrender process. The official position was that humanity would offer conditional surrender terms and hope the Zephyrians would allow Earth to maintain some level of self-governance under their rule. As Lisa scrolled through intercepted communications and battle records from the 43 conquered systems, she began noticing patterns that made her stomach twist with a mixture of excitement and horror. Every single civilization had followed the same basic pattern when facing the Zephyrian fleet. First came the overwhelming display of force, with massive ships appearing suddenly and broadcasting demands for immediate surrender. Then came negotiations where the target civilization tried to bargain for better terms or more time to consider their options. Finally came the formal surrender ceremony where the defeated species leaders performed specific rituals that seemed designed to demonstrate their complete submission to Zephyrian authority. Lisa pulled up holographic displays showing the surrender ceremonies from 12 different worlds and watched them play simultaneously. What she saw made her hands shake as she realized the terrible truth about how the Zephyrian Empire maintained control over such a vast territory. Each ceremony followed the same basic script, with local leaders approaching Zephyrian commanders while performing gestures that clearly indicated subservience and defeat. The conquered beings would bow their heads, offer symbolic gifts, and speak words of submission that were remarkably similar across completely different species and cultures. Dr. Kevin Brooks knocked on her door at 3 a.m, carrying a cup of coffee and a concerned expression that told Lisa he had been analyzing the same data from his own perspective as a xenopsychologist. "Captain, I have been reviewing the psychological profiles of the conquered species," Brooks said while setting his coffee down and activating his portable data display. "There is something very disturbing about the pattern we are seeing here." Lisa gestured for him to continue while she pulled up her own analysis screens showing the Zephyrian fleet formations and ceremonial arrangements. Brooks had worked with her on several archaeological expeditions and was one of the few people who understood her theories about how ancient alien civilizations used ritualistic displays to maintain social control. "Every species that surrendered to the Zephyrians shows signs of what we would call learned helplessness," Brooks explained while highlighting sections of captured psychological evaluation reports. "Their leaders did not just accept defeat, they seemed to actively embrace it in ways that go beyond simple survival instinct." Lisa nodded as pieces of a horrible puzzle began fitting together in her mind. She had spent years studying dead civilizations that had collapsed not from external invasion, but from internal psychological breakdown, and the patterns Brooks was describing matched what she had seen in archaeological records from dozens of extinct cultures. "Kevin, look at this data from the Altarian surrender ceremony 6 months ago," Lisa said while bringing up a detailed recording of reptilian beings performing elaborate submission rituals before towering Zephyrian commanders. "Watch how their leaders move and pay attention to the specific words they use." Brooks studied the recording carefully while Lisa pulled up similar ceremonies from other conquered worlds. After several minutes of analysis, his face went pale as he began to understand what she was showing him. "These are not just surrender ceremonies," Brooks whispered while staring at the holographic displays. "These are psychological conditioning rituals designed to break the fundamental spirit of entire species." Lisa felt a chill run down her spine as she realized the full scope of what they were facing. The Zephyrian Empire was not just militarily superior to their enemies. They had developed a system of conquest that attacked the very psychological foundations of civilized society. "The Zephyrians do not just defeat other species, Kevin, they reprogram them," Lisa said while pulling up energy readings from the alien ceremonies. "Look at these psychic emanation patterns during each surrender ritual." The data showed massive spikes in psychic energy emanating from the Zephyrian ships during every surrender ceremony, with corresponding changes in the brain activity of the surrendering beings. It was as if the aliens were using some form of technological telepathy to reinforce the psychological impact of the submission rituals, Brooks began, cross-referencing the psychic energy patterns with known telepathic abilities in other species. While Lisa dove deeper into the archaeological records she had been studying for years, if her theories were correct, the Zephyrians had found a way to weaponize something that most civilizations used for peaceful communication and social bonding. "Captain, I am finding references to similar psychic manipulation techniques in the historical records of several extinct civilizations," Brooks said while displaying data from archaeological sites across the galaxy. "It appears that this type of psychological warfare has been used before, but never on such a massive scale." Lisa felt her pulse quicken as she began to see connections between the Zephyrian conquest methods and the collapse patterns she had studied in ancient alien ruins. Many of the dead civilizations she had excavated showed signs of sudden psychological breakdown that had never been fully explained by conventional theories. "Kevin, what if the Zephyrians did not invent this technique?" Lisa said while pulling up star charts showing the locations of both conquered systems and archaeological sites. "What if they learned it from studying the same dead civilizations?" "I have been researching for the past decade." The implications were staggering as Lisa began to understand that humanity might be facing an enemy that had perfected psychological warfare techniques developed by civilizations that had been dead for thousands of years. The Zephyrians had not just conquered 43 star systems. They had turned conquest into a precise science based on understanding and exploiting the fundamental weaknesses of intelligent life, Brooks continued, analyzing the psychic energy data while Lisa focused on something that had been bothering her since she first saw the alien fleet formation. The way the Zephyrian ships positioned themselves was not random or purely tactical, but followed patterns that matched ceremonial arrangements she had seen in the ruins of collapsed civilizations. "Kevin, I need you to help me analyze something," Lisa said while bringing up tactical displays of the current Zephyrian fleet position. "The aliens are not just preparing for conquest, they are already beginning the psychological conditioning process." As Lisa and Brooks worked through the night analyzing data and comparing patterns, they began to uncover the terrifying truth about how the Zephyrian Empire maintained control over such a vast territory without needing massive occupation forces. They did not rule through fear alone, but through systematic psychological manipulation that made entire species want to serve them. But as dawn approached and Earth moved closer to the surrender deadline, Lisa began to realize something that filled her with both hope and terror. In all her years of studying dead civilizations and psychological warfare techniques, she had never encountered a species quite like humanity, and she was beginning to suspect that the Zephyrians had never encountered humans either. Lisa Carter burst into the Defense Council meeting room with 18 hours remaining before the surrender deadline, carrying data tablets and looking like she had not slept in days. Admiral Hayes was in the middle of discussing surrender terms with government officials when she interrupted the proceedings with an urgency that made everyone stop talking and stare at her. "Admiral, I need to speak with you immediately about what we have discovered regarding Zephyrian conquest methods," Lisa said while setting her data displays on the conference table. "Everything we think we know about these aliens is wrong, and if we surrender the way they expect us to, humanity will cease to exist as an independent species." Hayes looked annoyed at the interruption but gestured for her to continue while the other council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Most of them had already accepted that surrender was inevitable and were focused on negotiating the best possible terms for Earth's future under alien rule. "Captain Carter, we appreciate your research efforts, but our analysts have concluded that resistance would result in the complete destruction of our planet," said Secretary of Defense Patricia Holmes while glancing at her own reports. "The Zephyrians have superior technology and overwhelming numbers." Lisa activated her holographic displays showing the psychological conditioning data she and Brooks had analyzed throughout the night. The images of alien surrender ceremonies filled the room while energy readings and brain activity charts demonstrated the horrifying truth about Zephyrian conquest methods. The Zephyrians do not just conquer other species, they reprogram them. Using psychic manipulation techniques combined with ritualistic submission ceremonies, Lisa explained while pointing to the energy spikes in her data. Every civilization that has surrendered to them has been turned into willing slaves who actually want to serve their conquerors. The council members looked skeptical as Lisa continued explaining her discoveries about the psychological warfare techniques the aliens had perfected over centuries of conquest. She showed them how the Zephyrian fleet formation was already beginning the conditioning process and how Earth's leaders were unconsciously being influenced to accept defeat. "Even if this is true, Captain, what alternative do we have?" asked General Robert Kane while studying the tactical displays showing the massive alien fleet. "We cannot fight ships that advanced with conventional weapons." Lisa took a deep breath before presenting the plan that had been forming in her mind as she studied the Zephyrian cultural data. What she was about to propose would sound insane to everyone in the room, but it might be humanity's only chance to avoid psychological enslavement. "We challenge them to single combat according to their own cultural protocols," Lisa said while bringing up ancient Zephyrian texts that Dr. Brooks had helped her decode. "Their entire power structure is based on dominance hierarchies that can be disrupted if someone successfully challenges their authority using their own rules." The room erupted in shocked voices as council members began arguing about the impossibility of such a plan. Admiral Hayes raised his hand for silence while studying the cultural data Lisa had presented with growing interest and concern. "Captain, you are suggesting that we stake the fate of our entire species on a single combat between a human and whatever champion the Zephyrians choose to send," Hayes said while his tactical mind tried to process the implications. That is not a military strategy, that is suicide. Lisa understood their reaction, but continued explaining the psychological weaknesses she had discovered in the Zephyrian power structure. Their entire empire depended on maintaining absolute dominance over their subjects and any successful challenge. To that dominance could cause systemic failures throughout their fleet. Admiral, the Zephyrians have never encountered a species like humanity, Lisa said while displaying comparative psychological profiles of humans versus the 43 conquered civilizations. Every other species they have defeated shows predictable submission responses to authority, but humans have a documented history of defying overwhelming odds. Dr. Brooks entered the meeting room carrying additional data that supported Lisa's theories about human psychological resistance to the types of conditioning the Zephyrians used on other species. His analysis showed that human brain structures were fundamentally different from the aliens who had been successfully reprogrammed. The captain is correct about human resistance to psychic manipulation, Brooks said while presenting his research to the stunned council members. Our species evolved different neural pathways that make us naturally resistant to the techniques that have broken every other civilization. Major Alex Torres, who had been silent throughout the meeting, finally spoke up with obvious concern about the plan Lisa was proposing. As her closest friend in the defense force, he understood her capabilities better than anyone else in the room. Lisa, even if you are right about our psychological resistance, you would still be facing their best warrior in single combat, Torres said while looking directly at her with worry evident in his voice. The Zephyrian champion has never been defeated and has killed representatives from dozens of worlds. Lisa nodded acknowledgement of the danger while pulling up her final piece of evidence about why the plan might actually work. She had discovered something in the ancient texts that even the Zephyrians might not fully understand about their own cultural weaknesses. The Zephyrian dominance system has a critical flaw that they have never had to face, Lisa explained while showing energy flow diagrams from their fleet structure. Their entire psychic network depends on maintaining perfect confidence in their superiority, and any doubt in that system causes cascading failures. The room fell silent as everyone tried to process what Lisa was suggesting. She was not just proposing to fight their champion, but to use human unpredictability and psychological warfare to attack the very foundation of their empire's power structure. Admiral Hayes studied the data for several long minutes before speaking, in a voice that carried the weight of potentially dooming or saving humanity. Captain Carter, if we attempt this plan and you fail, the Zephyrians will likely destroy Earth out of anger rather than simply conquering us. And if we surrender according to their protocols, humanity will be psychologically enslaved and cease to exist as an independent species within a generation, Lisa replied while meeting his gaze steadily. At least this way we die as humans rather than living as programmed servants. The council voted on Lisa's proposal with most members opposing what they saw as a reckless gamble with humanity's survival. But Admiral Hayes cast the deciding vote in favor of the plan, recognizing that conventional surrender would lead to a fate worse than destruction. Lisa spent the remaining hours preparing for a challenge that would either liberate humanity or result in their complete annihilation. She studied combat techniques from dozens of species while trying to understand exactly how to exploit the psychological weaknesses she had discovered in the Zephyrian power structure. As the deadline approached, Lisa prepared to broadcast a challenge that would shock the alien empire and change the course of galactic history. She was about to attempt something that no other species had ever tried against the Zephyrians, using humanity's greatest strength against an enemy that had never learned to expect the unexpected. Lisa Carter stood before the communications array on the bridge of the UES Liberty, preparing to broadcast a message that would either save humanity or doom them all to immediate destruction. She had spent the last 6 hours memorizing the ancient Zephyrian challenge protocols that Dr. Brooks had helped her decode from fragments of their cultural texts. The alien fleet hung in space like sleeping giants, maintaining their perfect formation while Earth's surrender deadline ticked away with only minutes remaining. Admiral Hayes stood beside Lisa with his hand hovering over the emergency broadcast controls, ready to send humanity's desperate gambit directly to the Zephyrian command ship. Captain, are you absolutely certain about the pronunciation of these ritual phrases? Hayes asked while reviewing the phonetic translations that would accompany Lisa's challenge. If we get this wrong, they might interpret it as an insult rather than a formal challenge. Lisa nodded while adjusting the translation device that would convert her words into the complex, harmonic frequencies that comprised the Zephyrian language. She had practiced the phrases hundreds of times, but speaking them to an enemy that could annihilate Earth in response to a single mistake made her mouth feel dry with fear. "Admiral, I am as ready as I can be," Lisa said while taking her position in front of the communication array. According to their cultural protocols, they cannot refuse a formal challenge without losing face among their own people, but they can choose the terms of combat. Hayes activated the broadcast system that would transmit Lisa's challenge on all frequencies simultaneously, ensuring that every ship in the Zephyrian fleet would receive her message at the same time. The bridge. Crew worked in tense silence as Lisa began speaking, the ancient words that had not been used for conquest challenges in over 300 years. High Commanders of the Zephyrian Empire, I am Captain Lisa Carter of the Human Defense Forces. She began while the translation system converted her words into the alien harmonic language. I invoke the ancient right of Veltar Moken, the challenge of equals, to contest your claim of dominance over the human species. The transmission continued with the formal protocols required for a legitimate challenge, including Lisa's credentials as a representative of humanity and her willingness to stake her life and her species' freedom on the outcome of single combat. She spoke each phrase carefully while monitoring the energy readings from the alien fleet. After Lisa finished the challenge, the communications array fell silent except for the normal background noise of space-based transmissions. The Zephyrian fleet remained motionless while presumably their commanders debated how to respond to something they had never encountered before. Lieutenant Rodriguez monitored the alien ships for any signs of movement or energy build-up that might indicate they were preparing to attack rather than accept the challenge. The tactical displays showed no change in their formation, but energy readings suggested intense communication activity between their vessels. Captain, we are detecting massive data exchanges between the Zephyrian ships, Rodriguez reported while trying to interpret the complex energy patterns. It appears they are having extensive discussions about your challenge. Lisa felt sweat forming on her palms as she waited for a response that would determine humanity's fate. Every minute of silence increased the possibility that the aliens would reject her challenge and proceed with their original conquest plans, but it also suggested they were taking her proposal seriously enough to debate it thoroughly. Dr. Brooks arrived on the bridge carrying additional cultural analysis data about Zephyrian response patterns to unexpected situations. His research suggested that the longer they took to respond, the more likely they were to accept the challenge rather than simply dismiss it as the desperate act of a doomed species. Captain, I have been analyzing historical records of similar challenges made to other dominant species, Brooks said while displaying data from archaeological sites across the galaxy. The formal protocols you used have not been invoked in combat for centuries, which might work in our favor. After 3 hours of silence that felt like an eternity to everyone watching the alien fleet, the Zephyrian response finally came through the communication array. The voice that spoke was different from the one that had delivered their original surrender demand, carrying overtones of authority that suggested it came from someone much higher in their command structure. Human Challenger, your invocation of Veltar Moken has been acknowledged by the High Command, the alien voice said with harmonics that seemed to resonate through the bridge hull itself. However, your challenge will not be answered by a standard warrior, but by our High Dominator, the undefeated champion of 43 worlds. Lisa felt her blood turn cold as the transmission continued with details about their champion that made her realize she had seriously underestimated what she would be facing. The High Dominator was not just another warrior, but a being that had killed every challenger it had ever faced and had never shown mercy to defeated opponents. The High Dominator stands 12 feet in height with natural armor plating that deflects energy weapons and physical attacks. The alien voice continued with obvious pride in their champion's capabilities. It possesses psychic abilities that can crush minds and has never been wounded in combat across 4 centuries of challenges. Admiral Hayes looked at Lisa with concern that bordered on panic as they learned more about the opponent she would face. The description made it clear that the High Dominator was not just physically superior to any human, but possessed supernatural abilities that no normal person could hope to counter. The combat arena will be constructed in space between our fleets within 6 hours, the alien transmission continued. The arena will amplify psychic energies and broadcast the battle to both civilizations so that all may witness the demonstration of Zephyrian superiority. After the transmission ended, Lisa stood in stunned silence as she tried to process what she had gotten herself and humanity into. She had expected to face a skilled warrior, but the High Dominator sounded more like a force of nature than a living being. Major Torres approached Lisa, with obvious concern about the details they had just learned regarding her opponent and the combat conditions. As her closest friend, he understood better than anyone that she was walking into what appeared to be certain death. Lisa, this High Dominator has killed representatives from 43 different worlds, Torres said while reviewing the tactical analysis of their champion's capabilities. How can you possibly hope to defeat something like that in single combat? Lisa looked out at the alien fleet while her mind began working through possibilities that most people would never consider. She had not challenged the Zephyrians expecting to win through conventional combat, but had been planning something far more dangerous and unpredictable. Alex, I am not planning to defeat their champion through superior fighting skills, Lisa said while beginning to explain the psychological warfare strategy she had been developing. I am planning to do something that no other species has ever attempted against the Zephyrians. As Lisa prepared for a battle that would determine humanity's fate, she knew that her only chance of victory lay not in matching the High Dominator's physical abilities, but in exploiting the psychological weaknesses she had discovered in the Zephyrian power structure through methods that would shock both civilizations. The crystalline combat arena materialized in space between the two fleets like a massive transparent cathedral designed to showcase death and dominance. Lisa Carter floated in her modified combat suit toward the structure that would either witness humanity's greatest victory or its final defeat, knowing that billions of beings across the galaxy were watching her approach what seemed like certain doom. The arena's walls pulsed with energy that amplified psychic transmissions, broadcasting every thought and emotion to both the human and Zephyrian fleets while creating conditions that would enhance the High Dominator's supernatural abilities. Lisa could feel the alien structure probing her mind as she entered, testing her mental defenses in ways that made her skull ache with pressure. The High Dominator waited at the center of the arena like a nightmare given physical form, standing 12 feet tall with natural armor plating that gleamed like polished obsidian under the arena's strange lighting. Its 4 arms ended in claws that could tear through metal, and its eyes glowed with psychic energy that had broken the minds of champions from 43 different worlds. Lisa activated her suit's defensive systems while studying her opponent and trying to calm her racing heartbeat through the meditation technique she had practiced for years. The High Dominator radiated confidence and contempt as it sized up another challenger that it expected to crush within minutes of combat beginning. Human female, you will provide less entertainment than most. The High Dominator spoke directly into Lisa's mind with psychic force that felt like hammers pounding against her consciousness. Your species shows promise for slavery, but your individual weakness disappoints our expectations. The psychic assault began immediately as the High Dominator attempted to shatter Lisa's sanity using the same techniques that had destroyed every previous challenger. Mental pressure crashed against her consciousness like ocean waves trying to drown her thoughts, while alien emotions of despair and defeat flooded her mind. But Lisa had prepared for this exact attack using human meditation methods that focused on mental flexibility rather than rigid resistance. Instead of fighting the psychic pressure directly, she allowed it to flow through her consciousness while maintaining her core, identity through techniques the Zephyrians had never encountered. The High Dominator increased its mental assault when Lisa failed to collapse immediately, pouring more psychic energy into attacks that should have left her catatonic within seconds. Its glowing eyes widened with confusion as she remained standing and aware, despite forces that had broken beings with much stronger natural mental defenses. Lisa felt the alien's confusion ripple through the psychic connection and realized her first advantage was already working. The High Dominator had never faced an opponent who responded to its attacks with adaptation rather than resistance, and its confidence was beginning to crack under the strain of unexpected failure. "That is interesting," Lisa said aloud while the arena broadcast her words to both fleets. "You have been using the same techniques for so long that you forgot some minds work differently than others." Then Lisa did something that shocked everyone watching the battle, including the High Dominator itself. She began to laugh, not from madness or fear, but from genuine amusement at the alien's obvious confusion about why its standard tactics were failing against a human opponent. The laughter had an immediate effect on the High Dominator's psychic matrix as its mental connection to the Zephyrian fleet began fluctuating wildly. No challenger had ever responded to psychic torture with humor, and the alien's entire psychological framework could not process such an unexpected reaction. Lisa continued laughing, while she began moving around the arena in patterns that seemed random but were actually based on human dance movements she had learned as a child. The High Dominator tried to follow her movements while increasing its psychic attacks, but Lisa's unpredictable behavior was disrupting its ability to focus mental energy effectively. "You know what your problem is," Lisa said while spinning away from the alien's clumsy attempt to grab her with its massive claws. "You have been winning for so long that you forgot how to handle someone who refuses to be afraid of you." The High Dominator roared with frustration and charged at Lisa, with physical attacks that could have crushed her instantly if they had connected. But Lisa had spent years studying the movement patterns of different alien species, and she began mimicking the High Dominator's own motions while staying just out of reach. The psychological effect of being copied by its intended victim drove the High Dominator into a rage that further disrupted its psychic connection to the Zephyrian fleet. Lisa turned the ritual combat into an elaborate dance where she led and the alien champion followed, completely inverting the normal dominance relationship. "This is how humans handle bullies," Lisa said while the High Dominator stumbled as its coordination began failing. "We make fun of them until they get so angry that they defeat themselves." Lisa could feel the psychic shockwaves spreading through the Zephyrian fleet as their undefeated champion began showing weakness for the first time in centuries. The alien power structure depended on absolute confidence in their superiority, and doubt was spreading like a virus through their psychic network. The turning point came when Lisa deliberately tripped and fell, appearing vulnerable for the first time during the battle. The High Dominator lunged forward with all its remaining strength, expecting to finally crush this impossible human who had dared to mock Zephyrian supremacy. But as the alien champion raised its claws for a killing blow, Lisa rolled aside and came up behind it with a move that no warrior from any other species had ever attempted. Instead of attacking her fallen opponent, she helped the High Dominator back to its feet with a gesture of kindness that sent massive psychic shockwaves through the entire Zephyrian fleet. "I win," Lisa said simply while the High Dominator stared at her in complete confusion. "Not because I defeated you, but because I chose not to." The mercy that Lisa showed to her defeated opponent did something that no military victory could have accomplished. It completely shattered the psychological foundation of the Zephyrian Empire by demonstrating that strength could choose compassion over dominance. The High Dominator collapsed to its knees as its psychic connection to the fleet severed completely, unable to process the concept of an enemy who showed kindness to a defeated foe. Across the Zephyrian fleet, similar breakdowns began occurring as their entire worldview crumbled under the weight of Lisa's impossible victory. Within hours, the Zephyrian Empire began fragmenting as subject species sensed the shift in power and started their own rebellions. Ships that had maintained perfect formation for centuries began breaking away as their crews questioned everything they had been taught about dominance and submission. Lisa Carter floated in the crystal arena watching the alien fleet scatter in old directions while she realized that humanity had not just won their freedom, but had accidentally liberated half the galaxy by refusing to accept that might makes right. Earth became the catalyst for the greatest revolution in galactic history, all because one human woman had dared to laugh at a bully and show mercy to a defeated enemy. As rescue ships arrived to collect her from the arena, Lisa looked out at the stars, knowing that the universe would never be the same because humanity had proven that there were more important things than winning, and that sometimes the greatest victory comes from choosing not to fight the way your enemies expect.